that's all. We wanted that no Forest play. Come join Greg and Richard right here on Talking Red.
It's been nearly 2 weeks since Morgan Gibbs-White signed for Tottenham Hotspur, and the Reds were outfought and outthought by that savvy businessman, Daniel. Oh.
Hold up. Wait a minute.
Sorry, guys. Wrong intro. Must stop paying attention to those silly Spurs fans. Right, where were we? Oh, yes. In a twist, more shocking than the end of The Sixth Sense, the big news broke late last night that the saga has ended. Morgan Gibbs-White has now signed a brand new contract to stay at Nottingham Forest until 2028. But, I don't think Forest understand who Daniel Levy is, they said. The deal is happening 100%, they cried. I'll bet you anything you want that he joins Spurs for 60 million, they declared. Well, it's a dog-eat-dog world, lads, and my big fat Greek owner is bigger than yours. The fireworks at Eva's Grill are going off and the plates are getting smashed. To discuss it all and round up all of the latest Forest news as well, we're in the company of Raf, the Random Pundit, and resident Statman, Danscape. And if you've been here before, welcome back. If it's your first time, hello and welcome to Talking Reds, a Nottingham Forest podcast hosted by myself, Greg Oram, and my fellow Forest fanatic from across the Atlantic, Richard Spray.
To start with Morgan Gibbs-White and that potential move to Tottenham, I came off set last night basically saying it's all on track, everything looks rosy. What's gone wrong?
Baby, don't go. Baby, please don't go. Oh, baby, please don't go down in New Orleans, you know love. So, baby, please don't go. Baby, please don't go.
We've only got to done it again.
Baby, please don't go.
Back in the lead.
Baby, please don't go down in New Orleans, you know love. So, baby, please don't go.
What's gone wrong? What's gone wrong? What's gone wrong?
Tottenham Hotspur transfer target Morgan Gibbs-White has signed a new 3-year deal at Nottingham Forest. Spurs had triggered Gibbs-White's £60 million release clause earlier this month. Forest wrote to both Spurs and the player's agents, threatening legal action over what they believed was an unlawful approach to the player and a breach of confidentiality laid out.
I'm not fucking leaving. The show goes on. This is my home. They're gonna need a fucking wrecking ball to take me out of here. They're gonna need to send in the National Guard, a fucking SWAT team, because I ain't going nowhere.
There's no other place than Forest that I'd rather play.
Well, there is no other place you'd rather play, and we hope that is true. Welcome to you all to Talking Reds. Thought I'd go through a little bit of Zorba's dance, the Greek man and the fireworks going and the plates are smashing and all the rest of it. And then my camera's switching off halfway through and my mic's gone and I'm on the wrong side. I don't know what's going on. Rich is on my left all of a sudden and it's completely thrown me. But hey, Richard, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah, great. Yeah, finally rested. Got back from Colorado after a 13-and-a-half-hour drive. And suddenly my phone was blowing up as I actually got service. And oh my goodness, man, I couldn't believe what I saw. I couldn't believe the image that came through from Chris Aylmer of that new contract with the Ornstein article, and I was just dumbfounded, but at the same time, just pure and unadulterated joy at knowing he's still here. So excited.
It is. I'm going to try something and let's see if this works. There we go. Let's try that. There we go. We're back.
All is right in the world now.
And then Raf's with us and Danscape's with us. And we've just been witnessing another fantastic England penalty shootout. Here we go. All together. The women are the European champions again. Singing.
Good times never seem so good.
Yeah, the women just won the Euros. Penalty shootout. Fantastic. Congratulations to them. How you doing, Raf?
I am doing well, literally so well. Total weekend of sport, absolutely bonkers stuff. I tried to behave myself and not start baiting Spurs fans, but I might got a little bit out of control for about half an hour last night. But yeah,
fantastic. And Danscape, you feeling good, buddy?
I'm not sure yet. I'm going to see how this goes. I've had the flu since, I don't know, Wednesday, Thursday. So I've been struggling. So yeah, this is my brain trying to kick into gear, and it's been weird. Like yesterday was just such a weird haze of an evening because I was like, my brain was foggy, and then all this news was coming through. I was like, what's actually going on here? So we'll see how I do today.
Well, I noticed that you said in our WhatsApp group that you've been feeling poorly. You've had the summer flu. Thank you for joining us. If you are with us in the comments, please do say hello, drop in some thoughts and some opinions and so on. We want to hear from you as well. Please do like and subscribe. It really does help us out. So hit that like, follow button or whatever button it is that you can see if you're listening or watching and so on. We're grateful for you doing so. Before we get really started properly, on the last episode, I read out a letter from David Jones, who was asking about the Trevor Francis injury in the game against Crystal Palace back in 1980, and the recollection that he and his family had that Trevor Francis was carried off on a wheelbarrow. And we were trying to get some verification from someone that did that really happen. Well, no one's really come up with anything apart from Steph Wilkinson, who's a good friend of the podcast and watches and listens along. She went, like everybody else, to AI. I mean, the Grok is getting overworked at the moment on X. She went to Chat GPT, and they say, yes, it's true. One player really did get carried off in a wheelbarrow during a Nottingham Forest match in May 1980. And it goes on to say that it was Trevor Francis. It's not an urban legend. It really did happen. So Chat GPT has trawled the internet and come up with the answer that it did happen. So I hope, David, if you're listening, that satisfies you. And for those out there that were wondering as well, it did happen. And so if you've got any more quirky requests out there, Forest related, of course, then fire them over and we'll ask the team and the masses to help you out. All right. Morgan Gibbs-White is the only place to start. It's the hot topic. We want to talk about that. So we mentioned on a previous pod that, there's a chance he could stay. It was possibly a slim chance, Richard. And we talked about the possibility that they were buying time in the club to try and turn the screw on him to get him to sign a new contract. As far as the Spurs fans were concerned, it was a done deal. He was going nowhere. I'm sorry, I beg your pardon. He was going to their club and going to become their player. And so how does it feel that he's now signed? I know you said in your opening that Chris Almer got in touch and you were driving. So all of a sudden it kind of hit you at all sides, but now you've had time to sort of to settle in. We thought he was going and we kind of almost got on board with the idea that he was going just to kind of, so it wouldn't sting so much, but he's our player. It would seem certainly for the next 12 months. How are you feeling about it, mate?
Yeah, feeling nothing but good. I think it's a great sort of catalytic moment for us, hopefully, in terms of multiple things. One, you hope for the fact that it starts the domino effect of players coming in now that we're seeing that we're retaining talent and we're rewarding talent with better contracts and so forth. We're retaining the core of our team. We're getting ourselves in a position to where it's one less gap to fill, right? And we really just fixate primarily on, and we'll touch on this later as it relates to the right wing and then maybe some other areas that we need to strengthen. But, that particular area, and you're not just losing a talented footballer, you're losing a guy who's been at the center of what we've done since we've entered the Premier League in terms of building towards what, and I think I mentioned this to Adam Wickler earlier when we were talking to Adam, that Raf likes to say that sustainability concept, right? And I know he references it a lot with the financial side of it, but it's like we had to get to a point where we need to go one direction or the other. And I think this sends a message to the Premier League. It sends a message to our club that we do we do gift players who have shown what they can do on the pitch, and they've committed themselves to the cause, that you're going to be rewarded. And we all agree that there's still more in this player in Morgan Gibbs-White. You know, he hits that double-digit goal and assist mark. I think he's going to be worth a lot more than £60 million. So, and we already agree he's worth more than that. So I love the idea that there's some synergy between these two folks that are on the screen right now, and Evangelos Marinakis on the left and Morgan Gibbs-White on the right, as they talked about the ambition that they have, and sort of finding a common ground in terms of what we want to do, what they want to do for the club going forward. But yeah, he's been a centerpiece to that, and grateful that he's still a part of it and continuing to be a part of this project and building towards something even more spectacular.
Everyone has probably seen and heard and read the quotes. I won't read them out in full, but Marinakis says that there was significant interest from various clubs, and we were determined to build our future with Morgan at the heart of it, and so on. Morgan Gibbs-White himself said, "I believe in what we're building here, and with the backing of Mr. Marinakis, I want to be a part of making something special happen." Also, John Percy has tweeted an article, or tweeted something in the last sort of 25, 30 minutes or so that we've got somewhere. And there's an article I haven't read yet, but Nick Hemphill has just sent me a message to say, and I haven't verified this, but from what he's saying is there's no release clause in this new contract. There is no release clause. And that's coming from Percy's article, and no gentleman's agreement to leave in 12 months. So I don't know if that's true or not, but I mean, Nick is usually pretty hot with lots of stuff that's going on. As I say, he's just sent me a private message, and it could be Danscape. We've not just pulled a blinder, we pulled an absolute blinder, because I was pretty sure that there has to be a release clause in there. What do you think about that news?
Yeah, that would be the ultimate negotiation, and it just makes you question what this entire story has been about, really. You sort of think if it's ended up in this scenario, then was most of what was released just, nonsense from different sides, about the secret release clause and this, that, and the other? Was it all just speculation entirely and people feeding in stories? Because to end up here suggests that he was pretty happy, and he was always part of his one of his plans was to stay here. So, why would he have been suddenly rushing to a medical at Spurs without talking to us? And obviously, at some point, there was news about that we'd been trying to talk to him for 12 months about a contract, and he refused. And then all of a sudden, within a week, he's turned around and signed one that has no release clause, and he's going to be here for an extra year and all that. So literally no idea what to believe. All we can judge is the outcome, which is that we've still got Morgan Gibbs-White, which solves, that one problem. And it shows how hard you have to fight just to stay where you are almost as a club, not lose your talent. And so we just got to obviously carry on from here. But it's great news. I just think the rest of it is just guesswork as to exactly what has gone on now. And hopefully he's happy and, kicks on and has a good season.
I'm just putting the article up on my phone. It does say that. It says there is no release clause. There is no gentleman's agreement to leave next summer. Gibbs-White will be the best paid player in Forest history, and Marinakis views this as a major triumph. Earlier on in the article, it talks about how Spurs bungled the release clause activation. Tottenham made their move on July the 10th, and the fallout was spectacular. Forest were convinced Spurs had breached certain levels of confidentiality, which we know, and there were even doubts that they matched the exact terms of the release clause. He goes on to say that such clauses can be very complex, and it is understood that Tottenham fell short of activating a number of conditions. Goes on to talk about the legal action that was imminent. An intention of legal action to Spurs was sent to Daniel Levy. An official complaint to the Premier League was also under consideration. But Danscape's right, isn't he, Raf? That, you never really find out the truth of it. It's probably in there somewhere. But the facts are, the facts of the matter are, that it blew up 2 weeks ago. Morgan Gibbs-White has done nothing but conduct himself professionally throughout all of this, and he has now signed a brand new contract, making him the best player in our history, paid player in our history, and there's no release clause. So ultimately, I thought we might have him for just another 12 months. Having read that, I'm now rethinking that. He could go down as a legacy player. I said in the last episode, he could be up there with John Robertson and with Stuart Pearce. What are your thoughts on all of this, Raf?
So it's super interesting. And in life, I usually try and use logic to try and figure problems out, but that doesn't really work very well in football quite a lot of the time. But I think, last time I gave it, Rich, what did I say? 20% when you asked me what percentage I thought. I was about 20%.
It was actually 15.
15, maximum 20. But that was my logical slice, was because from his perspective and the agent's perspective, you get a payout for a full new contract right now if you sign, and then you can move in the near future and then get paid all over again. And you leave on better terms because you don't leave on bad terms, and you get your leaving club enough money and everything else, and it all kind of works out, which is how this has all transpired. The little devil in me kind of thought, well, football's a bit of the Wild West. So maybe his agent went out to use Spurs as bait to get him a new contract. But if that was the case, then it would be to try and put the club under pressure to give him that contract that had a release clause still in it, but on better terms, to give him his out. So if Percy's saying, and Percy and Ornstein are the only two people I listen to about rumours now, not even Fab. Fab gets a here we go, but that's all. And I'll come on to
Fab's here we goes have been diluted. Fab's here we goes have been diluted.
Exactly. But usually when he goes here you go, you usually kind of trust that still. But otherwise, I'll come on to Fab with an example a bit later on when you go to other transfers and other things as well. So for me, if there's no release clause that's in there, then that doesn't even seem like some sort of sneaky play by the agent or Morgan Gibbs-White to get even better contract. And this just could be, quite really, a lot of clickbait rubbish that's out there. And actually, we've been ordering through our contracts, some of them more important because there was only 1 year left on them, and some were like very close to expiring. He's got 2 years. But what I would say, though, is an air of caution. He could genuinely still go this window, right? He could. But now for a proper price around 70, 75, 80 million quid.
Are you being serious? Do you actually seriously think that?
I genuinely give that about a 2 to 3% chance, but my 15% chance for something ended up coming to fruition. So I wouldn't roll it out as a possibility, but Marinakis is now under full control of if he goes getting the price that he wants for him. So don't rule it out. And Marinakis is the ultimate businessman, as we've seen, and no one mess with him. So that's one option. The second thing is it's 3-year contract, which means next summer something needs to get done because then he's on 2 years and he starts depreciating. So him being here for the rest of time that's not what this contract is about. Otherwise, he'd be given a 5-year contract. It's a 3-year contract, and I expect we're having this conversation if he's still here again in the summer, and I maybe think that next summer he goes. But listening to the vibe that's out there, I genuinely think that that will work for everyone, because he can then and his agent get paid again a year later for another full contract. We get a huge chunk of money. We've had a year to prepare a succession plan, which we currently do not have for him, which was the panic stations at all. We can get that plan in place. And then he goes with the blessing. We get a load of money. We've got someone who then slots into his role, and everything is all happy. So that's how I really see it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I don't think there's a cat in hell's chance that he goes in this window. I'd be astonished, and I think that would never in a million years is going to happen. I wouldn't even give it a fraction of a minuscule of a percent. Not now, not after what's just happened. There's no way on God's green earth that unless a club comes in with 500 million, which is not going to happen, or 100 million, which is not going to happen, that MGW goes in this window. It just isn't going to happen. No, there's no way that after all this furore and all this upheaval that the fans have had to go through, and Marinakis has stepped in personally and taken control of this and made sure that he didn't go to Spurs. I have to push back and say that I wholeheartedly disagree with that. There's not a chance in hell that Gibbs-White goes in this window. So there you go. You can clip it up if it happens, but it ain't going to happen. In terms of was this all about ramping up for a new deal? Again, I don't think that's the case. Personally, I can't see that. This has gone too far. It was too much. If this was contrived by his agent and Gibbs-White, which I don't think it was, it went too far for it to, and it got too out of hand in the space of 30 minutes for it to be, let's just stir the pot and get a new contract out of Forest. Far too much damage was on the edge of being done, and I just can't imagine for the life of me that was contrived. That's my opinion. I don't know that for a fact. I'm pretty passionate about both of those. But Richard, when it comes to the article with John Percy, he's talking in there with quite a bit of detail, and I'm sure that everyone is now trying to find it. I mean, it's not behind a paywall, which is nice, which is why I can read it. So you can go and read that for yourself. I'm not going to go through it, but the fact that it says as well that Forest is still after Ndoye, which we know, and also still after McAtee, even though Gibbs-White is staying. That is
succession plan.
Is nice
succession
to
plan.
think about. Yeah, you got to have succession plans in place for all players at all times. That's nothing new, Raf. So ultimately,
it is for that spot.
If Gibbs
what was the plan last season?
If Gibbs-White breaks his leg or gets injured, then you got to have a backup plan. Maybe Forest have learned that lesson. If we're going to have one of our star players out, maybe that's why we didn't get Champions League football. But Richard, what do you make of the John Percy article? I don't know if you've had a chance to glance through it.
I haven't had a chance to glance through it, but I think some of the bullet points that were put out there on X were one of the interesting bullet points was the fact that he never wanted to leave. So, maybe that's easy to say in retrospect after all that's unfolded, and now he's here and now he's going to be embraced. Nice.
Sorry,
yeah,
Dan,
I think I don't know what universe
Screenshot.
Danscape is an enemy for anyone, but
the nicest human being on the planet
Exactly
gets
right.
banned by another one of the nicest human beings on the planet. It doesn't really
yeah,
make
it's very
sense, but yeah.
strange. That's definitely not expected. But anyway, yeah, I was just saying in
Beauty of
terms
social
of
media.
yeah, exactly. I'm just it's an interesting concept to think about the fact that maybe, as you guys have pointed out, so this is not me necessarily bringing something sort of new or revolutionary to the conversation when it comes to this, but I would say that it definitely seems like there's sprinklings of things that maybe indicate that there was a lot of smoke and mirrors with this whole situation. And so as there tends to be in social media, what I think it is interesting, and a thought that came to my mind, you guys can tell me if this sounds like completely insane, but it's just the idea. It helps us too, I think, as a club and as a fan base, recognize and be more conditioned to the idea of what Brighton and others. What did we say, Dan? The other one, the Frankfurt model, the Eintracht Frankfurt model that we're not going to say Brighton model anymore. It's the Eintracht Frankfurt model, but Frankfurt, yes. So anyway, the idea that we need to get used to the fact that we're going to develop talent because we have a really good coaching staff and we have a great owner, as we've seen, who's investing in the club in every way humanly possible, including emotionally, right? Clearly that's been on display. And I would also say that conditions us to understand this is what it's going to be like when these great talented players are going to have to leave, because now we're going to be turning the clock another 12 months. And how are we going to handle the possibility of these things coming through with Elliot Anderson, as well as making sure that if there is such a thing as a £60 million release clause that was in there from the beginning to entice him to want to sign with Forest from the beginning, ultimately we've learned our lesson too in terms of how we structure those things. And so we're in a better position, I think, in terms of our negotiation practices with our players. But I'm excited about the fact that we've retained something that has been crucial to everything that we are as a club and has shown the passion, virtually the same passion and energy on the pitch that Evangelos Marinakis has shown as well. So I can understand why that he came out and said what he said. But yeah, I'm excited to go look into the Mercy article and see what else is there. But I do agree with the McAtee situation. And there's rumblings too that Marinakis may be getting involved with the Ndoye contract negotiations as well.
Yeah, and we'll talk about all that kind of stuff shortly. Dan, I know you're itching to come in, but last time on the pod, we talked about, has it happened where a player seemed to be so much out the door and then didn't go? We referenced David De Gea. And so we talk about
Paulinho.
Isak at Newcastle. We talk about Wissa at Brentford at the moment. Two similar kind of scenarios, some might say, being handled in very different ways. What are your thoughts on how Marinakis handled this? And I know you want to come in desperately as well, so you got other things you want to say.
It was just to follow up because both Rafa and Richard sort of mentioned the succession planning, and I don't know as this was a strategic decision so much, is all I was going to say. It was more about the principle, about why we've been so hard on declining this offer and making sure this transfer didn't happen. Because
it's in the article. He does say Marinakis took the Levy approach personally. Yeah. He felt the nature of Levy's approach was a slur on Forest and what he was trying to build.
Yeah, so it's not so much that this is about succession planning and we're doing it at the right time. It's more that this is a case of, well, we're not to be effed around with, so we're going to show, we're going to do everything we can to stop this happening, which is different from the Brighton model or the Eintracht Frankfurt model, which would be to have the price and you sell and you go again. So we still have to see how this plays out in terms of whether it's a good move or a bad move in another year or two's time, which I think we said originally when there was interest from Man City. It's kind of like, well, you don't know what this team's like without Gibbs-White in, because until you see it happen and you see it in a year or two, because there are other players out there, and this is possible to play different ways and all that. So it's a bold decision. It's a big, bold decision. But what it is good is that it's good. Coming back to your question about Isak and Visser, is it's good that Gibbs-White is clearly committed to Forest, and he was committed enough regardless of what happened to continue to turn up and train, and he wasn't trying to force a move and go, effectively Isak and Visser have gone on strike, haven't they? And it just seems to be kind of accepted these days. Obviously when Van Hooijdonk did it back in the day, it was like massive news and big, and now it just seems to be like
has done it as well.
It's just like, oh yeah, well, whatever. Just that's what we do. We just don't turn up, and that is too much player power, really, isn't it, in the scheme of things? So, I think what's disappointing about the likes of Isak is he's at a club that's already right up there, and he's the kind of player that needs to stay at Newcastle for Newcastle to jump up to actually challenge. And so, if every time a bigger club comes in, even when you're in the top 4 to 6, and you just move, then there's sort of no chance of those clubs making that step up. It's very hard. So. It's great that we've been able to do this and dig in and kind of show it. Like I say, I'm not sure it's a strategic thing. It's more about we don't want to step backwards from where we are now. And, hopefully it's the right decision in the long run for us. And we can, like I say, get him performing again and not distracted by everything that's gone on.
When you say it's not strategic, I'll be honest with you. I'm not quite. I'm sure I'm following what you're trying to say, because are you saying that Forest should have let him go then? Are you saying that actually there was good money on the table and it's time for him to depart? Because
I'm saying no club.
He's arguably our most creative player. I know that he does divide a little bit of opinion here and there, but ultimately he is our most creative player, I would say, to a certain degree. So for example, 5 days before, Newcastle coming in with big money for Anthony Elanga, and that deal's allowed to go through, and the player moves on. And yet, when something similar is in the offering for Gibbs-White, it's handled in a whole different way. And so, are you saying that it was handled in a whole different way because of the way it was done? And had Spurs done it professionally and appropriately, he probably would have gone. Are you saying it's literally down to the fact that it was Spurs and Marinakis took it personally, like the article said? Or are you not putting any stock at all in the fact that Forest wanted to keep their best player? Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's a bit of both, isn't it? But the Elanga transfer is strategic because we built that up and we got it to a point where we were happy with the price and so on, and we must have a plan somewhere to sign somebody else to replace him. The Gibbs-White one was a surprise because earlier in the window the rumours were out there, but it seemed to have died down. So we've then got to the point with Gibbs-White of thinking he's staying, and all of a sudden you get this offer out of the blue. But you can't be a club that expects every player you've got that's of a talent that's never going to be sold. So you have to have a succession plan. So if the right price does come in, you have to think, well, actually, we can use that money because we've got a couple of players lined up that we think will do it again. So we can't, it can't be that from here for the next 5 years, we have to keep the exact same, key players and starting 11, because that's what I'm saying is, even like if you're Newcastle, you can't even keep hold of someone like Isak when you're right up there in the top 4, 5, 6 teams. So
in Champions League,
you've got to have a plan B if the right price comes in. So clearly in this case, the price wasn't right. The deal wasn't right. So we've dug in and we've done it. But I'm saying it wasn't, it's one of them. It's not completely black and white, but you know what I'm saying is it was more about we're making a point that we don't want to be messed around when it's not on our terms, I think.
And that's really important.
Question, Greg, of why?
That's really important, though, quickly, Raf, is that Richard and I were talking about this earlier, is that Forest are out there. They are the Rebel City, the Rebel Club, and Marinakis won't take any shit. And I think that that's got to be admired. He's a very ambitious man, and he will do deals. He will sell players, Elanga. But ultimately, if you cross him and you go up against him and he feels like you're taking the mick, then it ain't going to happen. And he was prepared to lose a lot of money over it and dig his heels in. And I absolutely love that. I think it's absolutely brilliant. It may well be that he goes in a year's time. I can't fathom, sorry, I'll say it again, I can't fathom this window, not after this. January, 5% chance. Next summer, very much on the table that he goes. especially if very, very good chance he goes. As Raf was saying, with 3 years on and then the 2 years next year, that's when you got to start thinking about what happens next. So I get all that, but in the here and now, Marinakis did not want him leaving the club under the circumstances, under the way it was happening, and I'm fully on board and fully behind the way he's gone about it. Go on, Raf.
I agree, Greg, but also it's also the strategic finances. Alanga's deal was worth circa double the amount of profit than Morgan Gibbs-White. Once you put in all of his add-ons, there's a slice that's going to Wolves. Apparently, everything
made much more sense to get.
It made much more sense for Alanga, and we do need to sell in this window. We see what happens when we're under the gun in the Brennan situation. How we got Ando on the cheap coming in. We don't want to wait till next summer. So better the deal that you've got control over this summer, when you've got all of the window to go and replace Alanga, as well, as much as it pains you. It's a necessity and it's part of the strategy. And that's why. And for 60, that's what was galling, was that's not enough meat on the bone for us to get a decent return compared to potentially. But that's what I'm saying. There's a 2% chance. Someone comes in with 80 million, 3 games into the season, just before the end of the window, and we've got McAtee. He's been training with us for ages, and we can actually get another player in time, and we've got that plan now because we know it might happen. I'm not saying it might. It won't. There's a 0% chance of that happening.
Well, we'll agree to disagree, and
yeah.
Either way, what will be will be. Let me go to the comments. Ian Wigginson says, "Can we sign up Hannah Hampton as sales deputy?" I think she's brilliant. I mean,
and Chloe Kelly as well,
especially with Mary Earps retiring in the way that she did. And I'm not blaming Mary Earps, by the way, but the pressure was on Hannah, and she's been absolutely brilliant. So well done to her. Garibaldi Nerd says, "Good evening, chaps. What a contract extension." He's happy. The cheese trader, hopefully, is still with us in the comments. All right, gents, much love to you all. Morgan Gibbs-White is here to stay, and he's been watching the Spurs meltdown on Twitter, and it's been making his year. Also, Brucey with us. Anna Houston says, "Good to see you all. Greg, have you had your haircut? Or just minus the hat?" I have had a haircut. I've buzzed it all off. Thought, there you go. So he's not quite as much whitey grey hair flying around, and my beard got over trimmed a little bit as well, so hopefully it'll be back to normal very soon. All right, okay, I want to say thank you to Mark Wayway NFFC, £2 in the pot, thank you very much. He says, "I knew Morgan Gibbs-White didn't want away, he felt it in his water." All right, now Richard, the whole Gibbs-White thing's been a distraction. We know that. Alanga leaving the club, I should say, was kind of inevitable once Newcastle came back in, and they were pretty firm. And as Raf said, it made financial sense. And at the time, I felt I wanted more money, but having had time to reflect, I think we got a good deal. I think we probably got the best deal we probably could for Alanga, and it was good money, and it's served the club well. But with Gibbs-White, then all of a sudden in the Spurs situation, it's kind of through everything left field. I think it's interrupted the recruitment team and their plans for who they're bringing in, because almost like, well, what do we do? Is Gibbs-White staying? Is he going? Are we looking for a 10, or what are we doing? Now that that's been resolved, how do you see the next day or two, the 3? Are we now going to see the incomings that we've been yearning for coming to Nottingham Forest? Because the Twitterati are getting very, very tetchy. How are you feeling about it? I know you've been a little bit up and down. How are you feeling at the moment about all that?
Yeah, I'm on an up moment at this point. So I'm on the right side of the curve, right? I'm not in the depressed section of the curve, right? The change curve. But yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. I think, we talk quite frequently, you and I, obviously, and then I talk with Chris, where we sort of have a pseudo sort of therapist client, patient relationship going on, and that roles reverse on different days, right? Sometimes I'm the therapist, and sometimes he's the patient. But yeah, we've just been saying there's going to be some sort of event that I think is a driving force to movement, and you hope that this is the kind of thing, having stability, having sort of a what seems like a bit more solidified plan as it relates to, what your starting 11 is going to look like and so forth. And then recognizing where you still need to fill. What in the world is going on in the chat, by the way? I'm like, he's getting distracted by Spursy.
FFTV, we've had a redirect going on.
Infiltrated.
Yeah. And he said, what word are we hitting your chat box with? I said, there's only one word we can have, and that is Spursy. Yeah. Because Spursy have been very Spursy. Their window and their approach to contracts and stuff like that. It's all very, very Spursy. So if you are joining the Talking Reds stream. Welcome along. If you've hopped over from FFTV, please stick around. You're with me, Greg Oram, Richard Spray, the Statman Danscape, and the Random Pundit. That is Rafiq. Carry on, Richard. Hopefully your back. Your train is back on again.
Yeah, I was going to say that I think it's something we sort of discussed earlier as well with Adam Wicklow, which was the idea that now that you have a vision, you've got a player with his kind of level of ability and his how he can be a feeder to these forward players and be that guy on the transition, as we know he can be, to start to drive forward that offensive play. And so what we hope is that gives some confidence, I guess, for lack of a better word, to those coming in who are going to play in roles where they're going to be at the end of that distribution and be the kind of people who can take advantage of a player of his level. And so an Ndoye, from what we understand, that kind of guy is probably waiting in the wings, waiting for the opportunity to get this over the line just as much as we want it over the line. I think Fab was saying that earlier. Fabrizio Romano was saying that as well, that he wants to be with us. So hopefully this is the kind of scenario that sort of ignites that movement of and that change and that recruiting process a little bit, because I can imagine, and Raf's the resident accountant on this, but I would imagine that
he's a resident dealer by looks things.
That's long been questioned. I know. Yeah, what's Raf got going on in there? He's got his medical marijuana card.
It's either is Raf in a fish tank? Is Raf on CCTV? Is Raf a force ghost? Is Raf a cannabis dealer?
Yeah.
All of the above.
All of the above. Yeah.
He's a master. Was it say the jack of many trades or master of none, something like that? Yeah. So yeah. But anyway, I mean, from a financial standpoint too, you want to know where your position is because you're obviously offering a lot of money to a player, as you have with Gibbs-White, and so you want to understand where the books are at as well. So I can imagine that's also a stabilizing factor in that, in some capacity. But man, I'm completely lost right now. I'm like, I can't even get all of the movement on them. It's like my ADHD is just like being electrified by the constant movement to my right.
Let me say, do hit like and subscribe to those of you that have just joined us. I know that lots of you are saying that in the comments. It's a good opportunity for you to come back and see us again. We do our best to give you the best Forest content we can. It's just opinions and all the rest of it. So thank you very much for hopping over. If it is your first time, then we're thrilled that you are here with us. I'm going to get more chat from Dan and Raf after we take a very short break. For those of you that haven't seen it before, we like a lot of cheese on this channel. Cheesy intros, cheesy catchphrases, and just real cheese.
The Cheese Trader, based on Grape Lane in York, is a cheese lover's paradise. Home to some wonderful specialty cheeses, relishes and chutneys, and also with a fantastic street food menu. Try their loaded fries or posh cheese on toast. It'll be the best you've ever had. Owned by Forest fan Stu Freestone, the Cheese Trader proudly sponsors Talking Reds. Quote Talking Reds every time to get 10% off your order. The Cheese Trader and Talking Reds, the perfect cheesy mix.
So yeah, for anyone that hopped over expecting Forest content halfway through a cheese advert, we're back. We're back in the room. Dan, so Gibbs-White staying, sign a new deal. He seems focused. He has conducted himself, I think, in a very good way. We know that his partner had just an issue with their pregnancy, and so he hung back for a day or two, joined up with the lads in Portugal. It would feel and seem to me that the new deal wasn't a 5-minute job. They were obviously turning the screw on him. I say that in the nicest possible way. They were obviously having conversations with him once he came back into the building following his summer break. And he's saying all the right things and all the nice things again. I know that he's been called out for like stuff he said previously, but I mean, it doesn't go back to, listen, you can't ever really believe anything a footballer says. Ultimately, it's just a job to them. He's not going to say anything negative, is he? So what do you expect from him to say? But it did seem rather rosy with him and Mr. Marinakis, didn't it?
Yeah, it did actually. I think because they released the two little interviews separately. The first one, when it was just his, you're a little bit like he seems a bit subdued, but in the interview they did with Marinakis, they were having a good laugh together and about him being a legend and all that, and they just seemed to be a little bit of a good sort of relationship there, which was interesting to see. And Marinakis obviously had his little dig at Spurs within that interview as well by telling them that it was an inappropriate approach, and he's not going to take that for any Forest legends. So I think the message was pretty clear. I think Gibbs-White seems like he's happy playing football. He's got the World Cup coming up. I think for Forest, the most exciting thing is that we can have potentially an England international at a World Cup, which will be brilliant into the next summer.
Anderson,
yeah, maybe as well. Two of them. So I think from Gibbs-White's performances in pre-season so far, he's looked a bit distracted for me. He's obviously had his nice touches and things, but his passing range has been off. And one of the ones against Monaco, one of the crosses was all the way, completely out of play and stuff. So I think he needs the distraction gone. Whether that's the personal issues or whether it's the contract issues, it's probably a bit of both. So at some point, he needs to probably just focus in on the pre-season and get all the hard work done so that he actually has a good season to get into that World Cup. I'm just doing what Richard did and losing my train of thought because everyone's doing this and there's stuff going on.
Greg's trying to work out on a camera how to do left and right. And
I know. I'm feeling a bit giddy. I mean, I'm giddy because I'm going on holiday tomorrow and I'm out of the country for a while.
For a month.
For a month. Yeah, I'm going to Amsterdam with the fam, so I'm not going to be going anywhere that I shouldn't be. And Poland.
Although the show will go on, Greg.
The show must go on. Enough of that. David says, have you put your Gibbs-White post back up? I have put it up behind me, David. Good that you noticed. Thank you for doing that. I think that we'll move on now slightly and talk about the Fulham game a little bit, not too much last night, because it was a game of two halves, Raf. Literally, when you put kids and second 11 out against Fulham's first 11, you lose the first half 2-0 and people are losing their shit over it, which was a little bit extreme. And then the second half, you get your first team against their first team and it's a 1-1 finish and there's some nice touches. I saw a few positives in the game. Igor Jesus, Taiwo Awoniyi and Sangare were the three that I took away as being positive. And I'm not sure that everyone saw it, but pre-season friendlies don't really mean very much, do they, Raf?
No, if you look at correlation over the years of when we do pre-season friendlies, everyone gets really excited because we batter our opposition and then we absolutely tank the league afterwards. Or, the last couple of pre-seasons, I don't think we've done necessarily particularly well. And then actually we've had seasons that have done as well as we wanted or better. So I don't think there's necessarily a correlation. I don't put as much stock on this pre-season as last pre-season. It was more about Nuno having a pre-season last season with the core of players. And again, now that we can all take a chill pill about the squad and everything else as well, we've lost one player from our starting 11. That is it, right? So the core of us needing a massive, intense pre-season other than for fitness, but you've got the same core sets of players minus one that are starting in our starting 11. We might get an upgrade in midfield, right? But other than that, we're pretty set. And then with the other players that are there, we might have different systems that we're going to be using anyway in Europe. So they come in and they learn something different and everything else as well. So from that perspective, I don't really put too much stock in it. I saw the starting lineups and you could argue Fulham had 9 of their starting 11 from last season when I was looking down it. And we had 5 kids and all backup players. Yates is not a starter at the moment. He wasn't last season. So it was basically first 11 versus second/B team that we put out. So the first half, other than, I think Paul Morley said it well, other than 5 minutes, it was actually all right. And if you think it was basically men versus boys. So again, Nuno wins in, as far as I'm concerned, defensive solidity and getting, no matter who we've got that's on the pitch, they all know what they're doing and it's all quite structured. The good news is I actually thought it was a cheeky strategy. I thought Nuno was trying to break some sort of voodoo headspace headlock that we've got, that if we concede first, all from last season, we can't win games. So he sent out the kids to lose the first half and then put on the first 11 to see if we could come back in the second half and break the curse. So there was a part of me which thought that maybe that's what he was doing. But yeah, other than that, it's a miracle that Taiwo is back up and running and playing professional football. I mean, that was a Premier League team with Premier League starting players that were playing, and he equipped himself, got himself fitter. we've already like midfield's enhanced. We didn't have that Sangare last season, pretty much for any of it, and that's like a whole new player, which is fantastic. Yeah, I agree, Anna. It's game that could be game changing, and that's a huge amount of creativity that's then pumped into our team that we didn't necessarily have last season, which is really, really key. So that was kind of my thoughts. And you know, all minutes are good minutes, to be honest, as long as you're pushing it. And it was more the fact that actually that was quite contested and people were running around a lot rather than walking through their paces. And I take more value from that than anything else.
Anna was saying that she thinks Sangare is going to have a big season, which is something we all hope for. And also, I want to say thank you so much to the people that have subscribed in the last 15 minutes. We have moved up to 1,369 subscribers on YouTube. So, by all means, if you haven't done so far, please do subscribe and join in all the fun. So, squad shape and transfer talk is probably... if you want to chuck any more comments in on the friendly, Richard and Dan, do so as well. But I also want to kind of tie in now something Callum Castell put out, good friend of Talking Reds. This is something Richard noticed. So he kind of put out onto his social media the kind of squad players we've got. And it looks like, you know, we definitely need support for Williams and Aina. We need support on the wings, which you know about. I mean, he's putting Doy down. And McAtee there as because we're targeting them.
And David Luiz.
And David Luiz, which again, Richard, I know you're not doing that.
Hopefully not David Luiz.
Well, go on then, Dan. Right? I'll come to Richard in a moment. Then, Dan, you've put your neck on the line. Why not David Luiz?
Because he's the Brazilian centre back, isn't he, with the big hair? Is that the guy?
Not David Luiz, then. Yeah,
Douglas Luiz.
Douglas Luiz.
Oh yeah, even I went with
he
it.
Was a mistake waiting to happen
Douglas
every
Luiz.
time.
David Luiz. He's right. What's his name? Sideshow Bob's mate.
Yeah.
So I was just pointing that one out. That was all.
But what do you think about Douglas Luiz, though, Raf?
I think he's too expensive. Simply put, too expensive for a player that's probably just going to be competing with Sangare, who we've already got and we already spent a lot of money on. So for me at the minute, obviously the priority is all about getting those wingers wide forward sorted and spending what we need to get at least two really good players in those positions. And then we need a couple of fullbacks because we literally have no backup fullbacks at the minute that we're going to use. So by the time we've got through all that, I just don't think you'd then be spending another 25 million and a massive wages on Douglas Luiz. I think you could find another Elliot Anderson for similar money if you really wanted to. That's like a 21, 22-year-old player that will progress and be worth, double. Whereas Douglas Luiz will be Douglas Luiz. Whatever you spend now, I don't think you'll see any of that money back. It'll be one that his contract runs out, and I don't think he's actually that interested. Anyway.
Is it always going to be the case though? I mean, that sometimes you are going to buy a player with that level of experience who's still really good, where you're going to have to pay a bit of money for, and you don't get the sell on. I mean, if we really want to progress, sometimes you've got to take the hit, haven't you? And say, well, look, we need to solid up. We want to get maybe 2 or 3 years out of this player. I mean, I hear you. I mean, I don't ever want to let anyone leave that's a really solid first team choice for no money. I don't want people to run their contracts down. But at the same flip side, I want to bring players in. I don't want to keep hunting around for that 21, 22-year-old on the hope that they're going to be an Elliot Anderson because, sometimes it just isn't going to work out. And there's a lot of unknowns with those types of players. Richard, what's your thoughts on Douglas Luiz, for one? And are you worried about the lack of fullback options beyond Williams and Aina?
I am a little bit worried about the fullback options, to answer that question first, simply because of the lack of, obviously, bodies in those spaces that we can see right now with question marks on Callum's starting 11 here that he's projecting. It's an obvious that there's two obvious holes and gaps. I mean, it's just, I think the question around is what are you looking for, to your point? Yes, it would be great. In an idealistic scenario, you have those, as we talked about succession planning earlier, you have those young players you're sort of developing, slowly enough to where they can get acclimated to the Premier League if they're coming from other leagues. For example, like I know, Dan and I have talked about Mateus Fernandez. I tend to kind of like align myself with what Dan's saying. I worry about what you have to throw at the situation to bring a Douglas Luiz in, because I don't think he's going to come on the cheap unless he's absolutely adamant that he wants to sort of rehabilitate his career, because he's become a forgotten man at Juve. So is that the kind of situation he wants to do? If that's the situation, then maybe you take a punt on him, because then it doesn't hurt you as much from a pounds perspective. But I think there's players out there. I think Dan and I both talked about this offline about, we think there's other players out there, and you've got players that have played in the Premier League like Mateus Fernandes, who's shown he can keep, I think, up with the pace. The team as a whole couldn't, clearly, but as an individual player, he was actually quite good. So that's the kind of player at 20 years old, almost 21 years old, who is maybe that guy that can also provide coverage, but also maybe in the next 2 or 3 years provides that succession plan in the event that for some reason Sangari's moved on or whatever the case may be. But I'd also question around, what you can look at, and I think Raps brought this point up, Ina and Williams is sort of being cover for each other. So if you get an injury, heaven forbid, if you've got a strong left back, that you can, if Ina got injured like he did last season, you can move Nico over to the right. Doesn't change the fact that you still need someone to cover that right side regardless. But I think there's some value in the fact that we have two players who can cover each other to a certain extent. And thankfully, neither of those two players have been injured at the same time. This isn't real wood, but I'm knocking on it right now just for hopes that we don't see that come to fruition. But I think that's the versatility we possess within our squad, and that's what's been coveted by our coaching staff and by our administrative leadership in the organization that we have, which is getting those players who can play multiple positions. I think Callum even referenced it right there with McAtee being able to kind of vacillate between that wing and that potentially a 10 spot, so he kind of covers two areas in one player. But I'm also curious, just getting back to what you were talking about with the friendly. I know we're quickly running out of time here, but I'm curious about the structure a little bit, because there are at moments, and it almost came across like we were running some sort of box midfield, because it was like we had Callum playing sort of like almost like a pseudo 10 role. We had Jesus and Wood kind of like shifting between left and right position and up at the striker, the striker level. And I just wasn't quite sure what we were. I need to go back and really study that game more, but I'm intrigued to see what happens with Callum Hudson-Odoi as well, because he seemed to be playing quite central, and when he was on the right. And what's exciting is to see him have a little uptick in the decisiveness and an uptick in the in already he's a very good tidy player on the ball, but to see him have such an impact, I think, in a different way than what we've typically seen him have, which is where we've been so codependent on that left side, dominating our percentage of our attack, and being able to distribute that a little bit more, and having guys like him potentially step up and take it to another level at only 23, almost 24 years old is exciting, just in terms of what we've seen. Because I agree with Dan, Gibbs-White's look a little bit rusty, but Callum looks locked in, and that's scary for the Premier League, because I think when he's locked in, he's a very difficult player, as we know, to deal with. But I'm really, really looking forward to see what our actual structure is and all these multiplicity of formations that we can deploy, especially if we start getting some new players in that can play multiple positions and provide different looks for opposing teams that Nuno could take advantage of.
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting situation, because Jesus and Wood linked up really well together. That they were kind of interchanging between centrally and left. Callum was on the right. Igor Jesus, all the qualities that we've heard about were on display last night. He holds the ball up really well. He's strong on the ball. He's one that will keep the possession that we've talked about. Now, I'm really, really excited. I think he's going to get a lot more game time. He's not going to just be the backup striker, I think. I think we're going to see him getting utilised. I want to quickly interrupt myself and Anna Houston, who is been such a great supporter of Talking Reds, and we love Dr. Anna. She says, my daughter Sophie is listening live for the first time. Can she have a shout out? She absolutely can. Sophie, thank you for tuning in and listening to us on Talking Reds. We hope that you are enjoying the chat. I'm going to keep it clean while you're listening. Now I know you're here, and there won't be any of my certain sound clips that get played. So thank you for coming and listening, Sophie, and to anyone else as well listening on for the first time. Dan, just kind of on squad shape a little bit and the game last night. I mean, I know you weren't feeling too well, but what did you make of Awoniyi for one? I mean, I was impressed with what I saw. I'm not saying he was a well beater. I thought he looked leaner, sharper, faster, stronger. And I'm not saying he's going to all of a sudden. I said all of our problems have been solved, but he showed up. He looked all right. And we've talked about Sangare winning in the midfield. The battle was his jewels, really strong. So what did you make of those? And did anyone else get a chance to kind of like impress you last night? And I'm going to go to Raf in a moment for some PSR chat, but it's Ndoye and it's McAtee, and there's the right back that you put out from Atletico Madrid the other day, the Argentinian starting right back, whose name escapes me, who would be all over. I'm in favour of bringing in fullback cover who are there to compete for a place, not just to be a Toffolo and sit on the bench, and he's always going to be on the bench. I love Aina and I love Williams, but if there's someone better that comes in, then so be it, right?
Yeah. Where was the question starting?
Well, it's kind of, I'm kind of giving you the floor to kind of talk about the friendly and the players that impressed you, and the kind of players that you want to see coming into those positions, really.
Yeah, Taiwo did look super slim and fit. I agree. He looks well up for it. And I think the minute we played into the style that he used to play when he was, fit and firing, which was a ball in behind for him to run onto, he looks good. When you play the ball into his feet and he has to sort of make a decision on how to hold it up and pass it off to someone, unfortunately, it still fell short again, didn't it? It sort of bounced off him a bit, and he gave the ball away. So I don't think you can say that he's not fit and ready to go. It's just whether or not we're going to play in a style which suits him to get at people. Elsewhere, Sangare did look good again. He looked good. He looked fit again, and was winning some good tackles. And the referee was a bit weird. He seemed to give some soft stuff and not others. I think Sangare got punished a couple of times when he could have won as the ball quite high up the pitch and started something, but the ref gave that and then didn't give other things. Wood looked sharp in terms of getting on the end of things. Obviously, his header was incredibly precise, even though it was a free header. It was exactly what you expect from Chris Wood. My only caveat on the Jesus performance is just that he didn't have any shot. We didn't get to see what he's like and on a 1v1. What he's going to do under pressure with his finishing.
Nearly. There was a couple of nearly moments.
Yeah, nearly got on the end. And that's been the question mark, is his hold-up play is great. He's a Brazil, number 9, for God's sake. He's going to be good, isn't he? He's not going to turn up and have the ball bouncing off him and stuff. He's going to be to a certain standard. It's just that finishing. It's that one-on-one stuff where that'll be where the test comes with him as to whether he can stand in for Wood as and when he needs to. And then, I thought some of the kids were good as well in the first half, to be fair, albeit I don't think, they're going to be looking to be in the mix for Nuno. So, yeah, when it comes to other signings, we just need to start getting on with it. Hopefully, the Morgan Gibbs-White thing being resolved is the start of that. Maybe Europa news as well, coming in early next week, might also sort of mean that we set our budget and we can spend another €5 million on Dan Ndoye and just get it over the line. And it just, we need that winger, because I think the reason you saw that formation last night and the box and all that is just because we don't have anyone else to actually play wide. So that's why we did it. I don't think it's because Nuno's thinking that's the key. It might be plan B or C, but ultimately, until you give him another winger to really spread the game, then you're going to see him having to experiment with what we do with that setup.
Listen, there's going to be another 5, 6, 7 players, I think, coming into the club before the window closes. And I know that we would have all liked to have had them coming in sooner. It has been a disruption with the saga of Morgan Gibbs-White. And I think now that has been put to bed, we are going to turn the corner. And the recruitment team, and it's George Sirianos and it's the other chaps whose names escape me that are in charge of that. Everyone's going studs up on Edu, which is ludicrous. It isn't Edu's job, guys. He's in charge of the whole empire for Marinakis. He doesn't come in to sign players for Forest. He'll have a bit of a say. He'll have a little bit of a look, but it's not his job. So for any of you that are going studs up on Edu, then you're misplacing your anger at the moment, guys. It's all going to be fine. Do you think Marinakis is going to go out of his way to do what he's done and make sure Gibbs-White stays at the club and just leave it at that? There's going to be stuff happening. I'm absolutely certain of that. So, Raf, over to you. How has this changed the PSR picture? Time is against us. We haven't got a bit of time. I want to give you time to kind of speak about the impacts on Gibbs-White now staying. We're going to guesstimate his new wages. I'll put the PSR spreadsheet is on the screen, and Raf
right, okay, cool,
is on. Here we go.
So what I'm not going to do is explain the whole sheet again. We kind of go through all the episodes. So if you go back episodes, there's one where I really explain this in full. But what we can see is a little update of where we are with people. Right. So we do know that Hennessy now has gone. He might be coming back in a coaching role, but I mean, his wages will be nothing like when he was a player in any way, shape or form. Turner, I actually still think he's going. If he doesn't go, we're going to get a truckload of money off buying a Lyon player, because if you're getting a lawyer out to try and break a contract, you know that at the moment the deal's going through and you're throwing everything at it that's non-conventional to try and break it. I can go into the legal side of things, but that's quite dull. So I still think Turner is still going, or we get money from somewhere else. All the rest of all of these are all gone that we all know of. Mbambadelli's gone. We don't know what's happening with Richards yet. But with the ones we don't know, Carmo, for example, as well, if they end up going back to Ollie, for example, there will be loan fees that will be attached to it that we will be getting that will help this number out. So do bear that in mind, that it's not as doom and gloom. If these aren't sold, there is money coming in to help balance things out. Then O'Brien, that was an absolute quality bit of selling for 1 year left on a contract, which is absolutely great. Morgan's now been pulled out, right? So I'm going to not highlight him anymore to say there's less than 2% chance that he's going to be sold. Great. There you go. Right.
Gone up.
So yeah, that's going out. So Danny gone, which is great. Stamanic again from the friendlies. We're not sure. Apparently he can't really follow structure as well. That's what came back from Ollie. So it doesn't really fit with Nuno's midfield that needs to be structured. They quite liked him at Ollie though. So I don't know what's going to happen with him. Oh, Emmanuel Dennis. Right. I don't think there's anyone coming for him. So that is still blank. And I think he's still going to be on our books and he's not going to get loaned because he's just rubbish. Bowler might actually be going. Was it to Gillingham or somewhere else? I can't remember where he was going.
Somewhere down there.
Something like that. I'm going to Gillingham on Friday, actually. But for next to nothing, and I think it's pretty immaterial. Taiwo, I don't think he's going anywhere yet. I think we need to prove his fitness before we can sell him. But I wouldn't be surprised if he goes in Jan. So it will affect this year. And then Jota, we'll come on to Jota in a minute. But I think Jota is off ski. And because he's not a winger, if we get McAtee in, then we've got 2 10s. We've got 3 strikers. So what's the point of Jota in the nicest possible way? So I think he will be gone. And then we know Alanga was sold and Sosa was sold. So what does that mean, right? And then we got the contracts extensions for Williams, Aina. Basically, I've given everyone 50 grand more a week. And I think if Morgan was on 80, I think the number that I was having a bit of a debate with Bennett, who thank you for your kind of debate on this as well. Bennett was started at 160. I bargained down to about 130 and we came to about maybe 135 or so, which still makes him the best paid by a little while. And that gives him 2.6 million quid extra a year in salary. So I think around about 500, about 50k extra a week, like I think Williams has been given and Ola's been given. And Callum, I don't think will get that much because then that will make him the best paid player ahead of Morgan. But it'll be kind of maybe around there. So actually, maybe this is more like that type. That type of thing. So those are the new contracts that are in there. And then you get a bit of saving on amortization because you can't actually extend Morgan Gibbs-White's contract any further than when it was. But you're getting savings on these ones, but not on this one, because you're actually going to have to pay agency fees and other things as well, which then get put into the contract and you've got more amortization, even though you can't extend the period for doing it. Sorry, that got a bit technical for 2 seconds. Then we're into who's coming in. And this is where we start actually getting a bit more of a picture on names that are familiar that we hope are the ones. So actually, I haven't changed these since last time. And if you had a look at that depth chart that we did, there's McAtee, there's Ndoye. I've got Ramsey in then instead of Douglas Luiz. Muffio, who we think might get done, might not get done. I've had Darlow in for about 4 months as being probably the most logical solution that we want as our third goalkeeper, or even second goalkeeper, potentially, because he's got loads of experience and he's actually club grown. So he's totally a logical choice. But Leeds have sold their primary keeper. They're getting another one, but will they actually sell their second keeper as well? I don't know. And then this is the wild card. Now that Morgan Gibbs-White is staying, we may not need this extra player here. I still think from a depth perspective, we do want a third striker that is going to come in. That one striker to come in that can play both wings. One striker that can come in that can double down as a 9. One striker that can come in and double down as a 10. Sorry, wingers. One winger, 3 wingers. McAtee can do the 10, and Doy can do the right and actually the left. And then we might get someone in like a Yilmaz or a Wissa that can double down and be a 9 as well. So this is probably this is actually probably worst case scenario of going out and buying someone for 40 mil, someone for 35, someone for 35, someone for another 35, a fullback that can come in and be first string if they need to challenge for 25 million quid, back up for 8 million quid for our fourth striker. Backup goalkeeper for 5 million quid. We seem to buy them for about 5 million quid. We know Jesus, we know Giacunha that have come in for that. And spending, if we offered Brentford, now that Wissa's down tools, Newcastle go out and they need 2 strikers if Isak goes. And with Diaz deal being done in literally minutes today for about 75 million euros, I think that is wedge for them to then go and get Isak. Newcastle will then panic and they can't just wait on Wissa when Brentford are holding out for 50 million quid. But you can't then have an unhappy player on your books. Brentford will have to bend to our will in the food chain, and we might be able to get a cheeky bid at the end, near the end for about 40 million quid, 35, 40 million quid, and he goes. All of that, chuck in there with the wages that we've got. All of that, guys, do you think all that is plausible? In terms of players I've
got questions, Raf, just to kind of break that down a bit, because don't forget, there's not everyone can see the screen. So,
sorry. So I'm so sorry. Yeah.
And also the here, what's there and what's there. People aren't sure what that is. Just breaking it down simply, and time is against us. How much in term do you think is in the war chest? We know what we spent already. So what are you saying that's in the war chest to go and get these players?
If we spent, I have got 183 million quid.
And what does that do to us in PSR terms? Is that can we? I mean, obviously, I know that contracts mean it's going to be spread over the course of the contract.
Right, yeah. So this is pretty much 183 million quid. Pretty much everyone bar the goalkeepers being put on 5-year contracts. Weekly wages span from about 30 for the goalkeeper and probably what Giacunha's on to the one of the super backup fullbacks, all the way up to about 85k a week. Sorry, yeah, these are the Ks a week. 85k a week for Wissa if he came in, for Ramsey if he came from Villa, 75, 70. So they're decent wages that are in there. No one's going to be on 100. And that puts us, with Morgan now not going and all of those contracts in there, at about another 50k a week each, at about 20 million quid short of PSR come next June, which is why I then double back and say, right, on that, do not panic. I still think Jota's going, right, which will then put quite a lot of profit back in, because Jota on the books is now actually less than 5 million quid left of what we bought him for, left that's unamortized. So take 5 million quid off what we sell him for, and that's all going to go into the profit bucket, right? We've then got, if we're now actually going to go into Europa League, that's 20 million quid straight off the bat for just turning up. So that's the 20 that kind of covers this straight off of here. So, and then we're going to probably have some loan fees to Ollie that are going to come in that are always quite juicy that we get to then further get this. So I do think we can go out and buy those players that I've talked about, your Wissers or Yilmaz's, McAtee, Ndoye, Ramsey, Muffio, a good fullback, and maybe Darlow as a goalkeeper, all for those ranges of really reasonable amounts of money on decent wages, and I think we will still be okay. And that is why Elanga desperately needed to be sold for a huge chunky profit. And I really want to say the team have done so well in clearing out all of these players, right? Turner probably going. There's a huge legal wrangle. Omobamidele going. O'Brien gone. Danilo gone. Bowler probably out the door. Alanga gone. Sosa gone, right? And all the extensions that we've done. The club have done wonders. And that has taken off, basically, by selling all of those players that we've got. That has given us a one-off, just for this year, profit of 50 million quid that we've put back in the coffers. But what we've also done, on top of that one-off profit, we've also saved another nearly 30 million quid that we're not paying in wages or amortization for all of those players that have either had their contracts expire or we've sold them. So there's a huge amount that we've put back into the war chest here. So it's really, really actually, for the first time, now we've looked at this, it's actually looking quite positive.
Okay. Fantastic. PSR is a minefield, and spreadsheets and money, contracts, amortization. We try and make it as concise as we can. But yeah, there's money to spend. We know that. And the PSR picture is something we'll keep an eye on as much as we possibly can going forwards. All right, we're out of time. We've gone way over. Thank you very much to everyone who's been with us in the comments. It's really, fantastic to have you along watching. Do hit like and subscribe if you are on Apple and Spotify. Leave us a review. Let us know what you think. If you are watching this on the playback, you can pop comments into YouTube as well. Please do give us a feedback. It's good for us to know what you think. All right, we're out of time. Raf, Danscape, you two are legends as always. Thank you so much. Anything that anything that you want to add quickly before we depart, either of you, as closing thoughts, very briefly.
Dan, do you want to go first?
Thanks to David DC for asking if I was feeling better. Marginally. That's all I've got to say. I think we've covered everything else.
Yeah, I think he's a little bit spazzed out following the spreadsheet, but I hear you, David. I hear you.
Pretty sure you can't say that anymore, Greg. But yeah, okay. These days, but yeah. Well, my final say is there's a lot of flack that we've come on to as a club, right? But after getting our PSR fine and maybe a bit of a spicy tweet that went out, we have actually kept our nose clean. We have abided by the rules. We have abided by the law, right? Palace and Spurs have not, right? And Marinakis, all credit to him, our fearless leader. He has been made out to be a villain throughout all of these things and everything that's been thrown at him. I put out a plea to Greg Mitchell. I actually think there should be a banner of Marinakis being done, massive tifo, that's going to be done hopefully by Forza for the opening game of the season. I really hope so. Can everyone message Greg Mitchell and the Forza team to get them to do that? That would be absolutely amazing, because I think I've never felt like it's been such a long time to feel like we do about this club right now. Like we have an owner that will put his own reputation on the line and go. He flies out everywhere to get things sorted now. He'll probably be flying out to Bologna to get Ndoye sorted probably next week. This is such an amazing time to be part of this club. Ignore the idiots that are out there. We've done nothing wrong. Stand proud, stand tall.
Outstanding. Thank you very much indeed, Richard. I know you've had a very long week and a long drive back from Colorado, and it looks like you're about to head off to bed, even though
probably
like the middle of the afternoon over there. Closing thoughts from Oklahoma, Richard.
Yeah, a couple of things. Firstly, really glad Dan's well. Haven't had the flu in a long time, but from what I recall, it's not a fun time. So he's had a more challenging week than I have, I think. But a couple other things. Raf, we need to apparently answer this question desperately because there's some chatter going on. But I would say that Akalush probably falls into that near Wissa 35-40 million because I think he's a sought after player. But I'm just curious your thoughts on that real quick, and then I have another thing I just wanted to share before we go.
Cool. So if that's instead of Wissa or Yilmaz, and he can play up top and sideways, we've got about 40 million quid we can spend on him, and we can wages of about 80k a week on a 5-year contract, and that will bake in the numbers instead of a Wissa or a Yilmaz. That's what we've got earmarked for that type of hybrid winger striker.
Perfect. The last thing I just want to say, just another shout out to my grandfather who would have been 99 years old if he was still with us. So on July 25th, and he is the cornerstone in a lot of ways to everything that goes on my mom's side of the family, but in especially when it comes to Forest, because he was as committed and as deep of a fan as anyone can be in terms of his love of Forest. And so if anybody out there has any lingering stories, if anyone knows Ronald Edward King, who ended up living in Radcliffe but was from West Bridgeford, by all means share with me, because I know my mother and I she's got me into this genealogy thing, and she's really gathering a lot of things. She has quite an amazing memory herself of all the wonderful stories she has from my grandfather. But it's just, man, did he love Forest. He loved it with his entire sire being. So it's great to have that be a part of my life and a part of my family's life and my son's life, because my son Mason is a huge fan too. So ode to all grandfathers and other family members and people who have brought us into this wonderful community and this great fan base that we are part of, because it is the best fan base in the world. And I mean that in all sports. It's the best fan base in the world. So
yeah, here. Thank you very much, Richard. Okay, time to go, guys. We'll be back again very soon. About mid-August, about a week before, the four of us will be coming to you with our prediction show. We did one last year where we went through all the fixtures and we gave ourselves points and we picked a spot in the table. We'll probably kind of try to concise it a little bit. We ended up thinking we're going to finish 12th. So we undershot it, guys. And so we're going to do all that again. And whilst I'm away, I'll be joining and hosting from my laptop. So it's going to be fun and games over the next couple of weeks. And hopefully you'll stay on board with us and watch along and listen along as well. Morgan Gibbs-White is a Nottingham Forest player, and he's a Nottingham Forest player on contract until June 2028. Will he make it that far or not? Who knows? But the most important thing is that Mr. Marinakis says, in the end, we always win.
Come join Greg and Richard right here.